I didn't even put the face filter on. Fucking Christ. I fucking cannot right now. Fucking Jesus. This is astronomically bad. You know, I went into this half-cocked, and I'm paying for it now. And it's fine. You know what? It's fine. It's fine. It's good. We're gonna roll with it. I didn't even... Hi. Oh, man. Okay. Lady Eve is here. Oh, good to know.
Yay.
Good to know. I was not prepared. I'm also running late, so I'm 7 minutes late. So, I'm sorry about that. Dad's here.
You've been later.
Thanks.
So, this is fine.
Thanks for that reassuring...
We're under the 10 minutes. We're great.
Thanks for the reassuring notion that because I have been late before, that it is okay for me to be late in the future and now.
That's not what I said.
Thank you. That's what you implied.
I'm just saying that you have been later before.
That's what you implied. I don't even care. This, I swear to God, great. This is not helping me. I did not take good care of myself before this. And now I don't look like him, okay? But the energy I'm giving is, oh God. The main character from Secret Window.
Oh God.
Am I wrong? It's a sweater and I didn't wash my face before I did this. I didn't put my contacts in. It's the same energy, right? I feel like I need a cigarette.
I mean, I have some.
Don't.
I just have to pause the live real quick.
No, we're not pausing it. We're already rolling. I don't think you understand the level of anxiety that goes into this each week. A certain amount of anxiety is required to produce this show. And it's all me. It's me. I'm manufacturing it manually every single week. You're welcome. So this isn't the normal live. It's the Halloween special. So I'm just gonna read. I got some stuff, picked out here. I got some Lovecraft stuff, some creepypasta lined up. Some people sent me some creepypasta. A lot of My Little Pony creepypasta for no particular reason. Dad is with me. Dad is here. Dad came early this week for emotional support.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing. This is the Halloween special. I'm just going to read spooky shit to you all night. And you can really determine the order. There's a couple things that where's the phone? Okay. Dad's in here. If you're wondering. Do not read the MLP Cupcake one, please. I was not going to read that one. Mainly just because, even though it's the shortest, it also is so graphic, I am afraid that TikTok will remove this live. So
I'm about halfway through that one.
That one, yeah, I sent it to Dad because I was like, you gotta read this one's the most messed up one, please. And he was like, okay, so he's reading it. I am not going to read that one out loud, mainly because it gave me a lot of personal feelings, because I don't know a lot about My Little Pony, and I'm not going to profess to know a lot of My Little Pony, okay? But I do know the main ones, the Rainbow Bright one. God damn it, you made me say it. He got it wrong earlier, and then now it's making me, I was like, when it started, I knew I was going to get the name wrong. Rainbow Dash or whatever, and the pink one. Our friends. There we go. Fucking shut up. Now you know all the names. Now you know all of them. Anyway, fucking Christ. The minute the camera was on, I forget everything I've ever fucking known in my entire goddamn life. I do know that they're friends, and I have spent every single day waiting for all of my friends to betray me. So that one gave me a lot of personal feelings. Mainly from the emotional damage, because I'm like, well, that wasn't it. So that's okay. We don't have to do that one, and I'm not going to do that one. Yes, My Little Pony creepypasta. There is another one that I thought, I didn't want to do, Candy Mar was the other one that was suggested, that one seems a little long. I don't even know if I could even get through all of it if I spent the entire live reading it. So I'm probably not going to do that one, but I did decide that if we were going to do one of them, we would do the Rainbow Factory. That one's not too bad. And I'll be sure to give trigger warnings before every story that we go over that has a lot of... If it needs a trigger warning, I'll be sure to give you one. And if you need to dip out, and I have mods, they will alert you. And if you're part of my Discord, you can hang out in the Discord and shit all over this live while you're waiting if you want. And then someone will let you know when the story that you don't want to hear is off. So then you can come back in. Nostalgia of the weirdest kind right now. I don't know what you mean. Nostalgia for what? No. I do consider, I have a couple of creepypasta selected. I have one of my favorites, which will contain a trigger warning, and I'll be sure to give you that. There is also what I consider a pretty good classic, The Russian Sleep Experiment. I also have a Lovecraft story for us picked out, and we can start with that, or you all can choose which one you would like to hear first. And we can go through it that way. I wish I would have turned this eyeball down. I can't find the remote. It's very bright in the background, and it's really... get me in trouble. Hi! I've only... And also, I am not confident enough. When I asked for suggestions, I didn't think the first suggestion out of the gate that I would get was gonna be My Little Pony. It didn't fit what in my mind is traditionally would... I mean, you can make anything out of anything on the internet. You can take something, Care Bears or whatever, and make it terrible if you want. I'm not saying you can't. It's just not what I considered would be the first suggestion. And to my credit, I'm not super confident. One, I haven't watched all of My Little Pony. I've seen bits and pieces of it from people who I have known who were into it, and I know an entry level of information about My Little Pony. And it's pretty much the main characters. I can remember the names about 50% of the time when I'm not on camera, apparently. But I don't know any of the voices. So you're not getting grade A, you're not getting grade A content out of that. You know what I mean? If you're going to listen to someone read that, it's probably going to be a My Little Pony fan. They know all the characters and shit. And I'm just not it. I was not the market audience for My Little Pony, and I'm sorry about that. So you're going to get a weird grab bag of whatever the hell I deem necessary in a My Little Pony creepypasta. My friend showed it to me at 5:30 in the dark on the bus. I didn't know that there was a rife community of My Little Pony creepypasta out there. So that's on me. That's me. That's my problem to own, because I did ask for suggestions. I just wasn't expecting it. You know what I mean? So, from the lineup I got now, I have one traditional horror story for you. One of my favorites, if you all want to listen to it. And I've got... Yes, I did. That is what I said. My Little Pony creepypasta. And I have one creepypasta that I consider to be a classic, another one that is my favorite, and a couple that were suggestions. So that is where we're at, and we can read them in the order that you choose. That was the order in which I was going to go in, but if you would like to hear one first, if one piques your interest... I wanted to read Pickman's Model. Was the one that is my favorite one. How do we... I was either going to do that or the music of Eric Zahn, and I could do either or. I'm down for either.
Crimson said to save your favorite horror story for last.
Oh, but I wanted it to escalate in severity.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I wanted it, that's why I structured it that way, because classical horror, the thing that I like about it is that it leaves a lot up to your own imagination.
Yes.
In my imagination, I don't know if you've been there, probably not, it's a terrible place. So I'm going to come up with the worst possible solution every single time. So that, to me, is the thing that makes me think about it the most. Not the answers that are clear, cut, and dry. Oh, there's body horror. That makes sense. Yeah, no, the danger is evident. But the worst things are the things that you imagine happening, rather than what's actually there. Your mind will fill in the blanks with some terrible stuff, and I like that as a creative mechanism more. Mm-hmm. Don't hand me the answers. I'll figure it out myself. Or I'll imagine what I think is the worst, because I'm great at that. But Pickman's Model has always been one of my favorite stories, and if you all want to hear that one, keep in mind, it's an old Lovecraft story. There's a bit of an English barrier from the way that it's written, but I do like it because it just kind of gives off that vibe of two friends talking shit about someone who's not there to defend themselves. Pretty much the whole story is just, you know what I hate about Pickman? That guy is a freak. Let me tell you why. And that's the entire vibe of the story, and I just think it's funny. But Pickman's Model is probably the one that we could fit in time-wise the best. Do you want me to read Pickman's Model? Because I'll do it. I'd read Shadow over Innsmouth if we had the time, but we'd be here all night. It's like almost 100 pages.
We're getting a lot of enthusiastic yeses, and do-its, and twos.
All right. Let me take a sip of my coffee really quick. I hope you guys are ready. Get all your beverages, your pets. I mean, I have all night. Don't encourage me. I've thought about releasing it on YouTube. Don't encourage me. Pickman's Model. You needn't think I'm crazy, Elliot. Plenty of others have queer prejudices than this. Why don't you laugh at Oliver's grandfather who won't ride in the motor? If I don't like that damn subway, it's my own business, and we got here more quickly anyhow in the taxi. We'd have had to walk up the hill from Park Street if we'd taken the car. I know I'm more nervous than I was when you saw me last year, but you don't need to hold a clinic over it. There's plenty of reason, God knows, and I fancy I'm lucky to be sane at all. Why the third degree? You didn't used to be so inquisitive. Well, if you must hear it, I don't know why you shouldn't. Maybe you ought to, anyhow. For you kept writing me like a grieved parent when you heard I'd begun to cut the art club and keep away from Pickman. Now that he's disappeared, I go around to the club once in a while, but my nerves aren't what they were. No, I don't know what's become of Pickman, and I don't like to guess. You might have surmised I had some inside information when I dropped him, and that's why I don't want to think where he's gone. Let the police find what they can. It won't be much, judging from the fact that they don't know yet of the old North End place he hired under the name of Peters. I'm not sure that I could find it again myself. Not that I'd ever try, even in broad daylight. Yes, I do know, or am afraid I know, why he maintained it. I'm coming to that, and I think you'll understand before I'm through why I don't tell the police. They would ask me to guide them, but I couldn't go back there, even if I knew the way. There was something there, and now I can't use the subway, and you may as well have your laugh at this too, go down into cellars anymore. I should think you'd have known I didn't drop Pickman for the same silly reason at first, and I'll say it again, and I've never swerved an inch either. When he showed that ghoul feeding, that you remember, was when Minnow cut him. You know, it takes profound art and profound insight into nature to turn out stuff like Pickman's. Any magazine cover hack can splash paint around wildly and call it a nightmare or a witch's Sabbath or a portrait of the devil, but only a great painter can make such a thing really scare or ring true. That's because only a real artist knows the actual anatomy of the terrible or the physiology of fear, the exact sort of lines and proportions that connect up with latent instincts or hereditary memories of fright, and the proper color, contrast, and lighting effects to stir the dormant sense of strangeness. I don't have to tell you why Fuseli really brings a shiver, while a cheap ghost story frontispiece merely makes us laugh. There's something those fellows catch, beyond life, that they're able to make us catch for a second. Doré had it. Simei has it. Angarola of Chicago has it, and Pickman had it as no man ever had it before, or, I hope to heaven, ever will again. Don't ask me what it is they see. You know. In ordinary art, there's all the difference in the world between the vital, breathing things drawn from nature or models in the artificial truck that commercial small fry reel off in a bare studio by rule. Well, I should say that the really weird artist has a kind of vision which makes models or summons up what amounts to actual scenes from the spectral world he lives in. Anyway, he manages to turn out results that differ from the pretender's mince pie dreams in just about the same way that the life painter's results differ from the concoctions of a correspondence school cartoonist. If I had ever seen what Pickman saw, but no. Here, let us have a drink before we get any deeper. God, I wouldn't be alive if I'd ever seen what that man, if he was a man, saw. You recall that Pickman's forte was faces. I don't believe anybody since Goya could put out so much of sheer hell into a set of features or a twist of expression. And before Goya, you can never go back to the medieval chaps who did the gargoyles and chimeras on Notre Dame and Mont Saint-Michel. They believed all sorts of things. And maybe they saw all sorts of things, too. For the Middle Ages had some curious phases. I remember your asking Pickman yourself once, the year before you went away, wherever in thunder he got such ideas and visions. Wasn't that a nasty laugh he gave you? It was partly because of that laugh that Reed dropped him. Reed, had just taken up comparative pathology and was full of pompous inside stuff about the biological or evolutionary significance of this or that mental or physical symptom. He said Pickman repelled him more and more every day, and most frightened him, toward the last, that the fellow's features and expression were slowly developing in a way he didn't like, in a way that wasn't human. He had a lot of talk about diet and said Pickman must be abnormal and eccentric to the last degree. I suppose you told Reed, if you and he had any correspondence over it, that he'd let Pickman's paintings get on his nerves or harrow up his imagination. I know I told him that myself, then. But keep in mind that I didn't drop Pickman for anything like this. On the contrary, my admiration for him kept growing. For that ghoul feeding was a tremendous achievement. As you know, the club wouldn't exhibit it, and the Museum of Fine Arts wouldn't accept it as a gift, and I can add that nobody would buy it. So Pickman had it right in his house till he went. Now his father has it in Salem. Pickman comes of old Salem stock, and had a witch ancestor hanged in 1692. I got into the habit of calling on Pickman quite often, especially after I began making notes for a monograph on weird art. Probably it was his work which put the idea into my head, and anyhow I found him a mine of data and suggestions when I came to develop it. He showed me all the paintings and drawings he had about, including some pen and ink sketches that would, I verily believe, have got him kicked out of the club if many of the members had seen them. Before long, I was pretty nearly a devotee and would listen for hours like a schoolboy to art theories and philosophic speculations wild enough to qualify him for the Danvers Asylum. My hero worship, coupled with the fact that people generally were commencing to have less and less to do with him, made him get very confidential with me, and one evening he hinted that if I were fairly close-mouthed and none too squeamish, he might show me something rather unusual, something a bit stronger than anything he had in the house. You know, he said, there are things that won't do for Newbury Street, things that are out of place here, that can't be conceived here, anyhow. It's my business to catch the overtones of the soul, and you won't find those in a parvenu set of artificial streets on made land. Back Bay's in Boston. It isn't anything yet, because it's had no time to pick up memories and attract local spirits. If there are any ghosts here, they're the tame ghost of Salt Marsh and Shallow Cove. And I want human ghost, the ghost of beings highly organized enough to have looked on hell and known the meaning of what they saw. The place for an artist to live is in the North End. If any aesthete was sincere, he'd put up with the slums for the sake of the mass traditions. God, man, don't you realize that places like that weren't merely made, but actually grew? Generation after generation lived and felt and died there. And in days when people weren't afraid to live and feel and die. Don't you know there was a mill on Copp's Hill in 1632, and that half the present streets were laid out by 1650? I can show you houses that have stood 2 centuries and a half and more. Houses that have witnessed what would make a modern house crumble into powder. What do moderns know of life and the forces behind it? You call the Salem witchcraft a delusion, but I'll wage my 4 times great-grandmother could have told you things. They hanged her on Gallows Hill, with Cotton Mather looking sanctimoniously on. Mather, damn him, was afraid somebody might succeed in kicking free of this accursed cage of monotony. I wish someone had laid a spell on him, or sucked his blood night. I can show you a house he lived in, and I can show you another one he was afraid to enter, in spite of all his fine, bold talk. He knew things he didn't dare put into that stupid Magnalia, the puerile wonders of the invisible world. Look here. Do you know the whole North End once had a set of tunnels that kept certain people in touch with each other's houses? And the burying ground and the sea. Let them prosecute and persecute above ground. Things went on every day that they couldn't reach, and voices laughed at night that they couldn't place. Why, man, out of 10 surviving houses built before 1700 and not moved since, I'll wager that in 8 I can show you something queer in the cellar. There's barely a month that you don't read of workmen finding bricked-up arches and wells leading nowhere in this or that old place as it comes down. You could see one near Henchman Street from the elevated last year. There were witches and what their spells summoned, pirates and what they brought in from the sea, smugglers, privateers, and I tell you, people knew how to live and how to enlarge the bounds of life in the old times. This wasn't the only world a bold and wise man could know. And to think of today in contrast, with such pale, pink brains that even a club of supposed artists gets shudders and convulsions if a picture goes beyond the feelings of a Beacon Street tea table. The only saving grace of the present is that it's too damn stupid to question the past very closely. What do maps and records and guidebooks really tell of the North End? At a guess, I'll guarantee to lead you to 30 or 40 alleys and networks of alleys north of Prince Street that aren't suspected by 10 living beings outside of the foreigners that swarm them. And what do those Dagos know of their meaning? No, Thurber, these ancient places are dreaming gorgeously and overflowing with wonder and terror and escapes from the commonplace. And yet there's not a living soul to understand or profit by them. Or rather, there's only one living soul. For I haven't been digging around in the past for nothing. See here, you're interested in this sort of thing. What if I told you that I've got another studio up there, where I can catch the night spirit of antique horror and paint things that I couldn't even think of in Newbury Street? Naturally, I don't tell those cursed old maids at the club, with Reed, damn him, whispering even as it is that I'm a sort of monster bound down the toboggan of reverse evolution. Yes, Thurber, I decided long ago that one must paint terror as well as beauty from life. So I did. Every living Nordic man besides myself have ever seen. It isn't so very far from the elevated as distance goes, but it's centuries away as the soul goes. I took it because of the queer old brick in the cellar. One of the sort I told you about. The shack's almost tumbling down, so that nobody else would live there, and I'd hate to tell you how little I pay for it. The windows are boarded up, but I like that all the better, since I don't want daylight for what I do. I paint in the cellar, where the inspiration is thickest. But I've other rooms furnished on the ground floor. A Sicilian owns it, and I've hired it under the name of Peters. Now, if you're game, I'll take you there tonight. I think you'd enjoy the pictures. For as I said, I've let myself go a bit there. It's no vast tour. I sometimes do it on foot, for I don't want to attract attention with a taxi in such a place. We can take the shuttle at the South Station for Battery Street, and after that the walk isn't much. Well, Elliot, there wasn't much for me to do after that harangue but to keep myself from running instead of walking for the first vacant cab we could sight. We changed to the elevated at the South Station, and at about 12 o'clock I climbed down the steps at Battery Street and struck along the old waterfront past Constitution Wharf. I didn't keep track of the cross streets, and can't tell you yet which it was we turned up, but I know it wasn't Greenhill Lane. When we did turn, it was to climb through the deserted length of the oldest and dirtiest alley I ever saw in my life, with crumbling-looking gables, broken small-paned windows, and archaic chimneys that stood out half disintegrated against the moonlit sky. I don't believe there were 3 hours in sight that hadn't been standing in Cotton Mather's time. Certainly I glimpsed at least 2 with an overhang, and once I thought I saw a peaked roof line of the almost forgotten pre-Gamble type, though antiquarians tell us there are none left in Boston. From that alley, which had a dim light, we turned to the left into an equally silent and still narrower alley with no light at all, and in a minute made what I think was an obtuse angled bend toward the right in the dark. Not long after this, Pickman produced a flashlight and revealed an antediluvian 10-paneled door that looked damnably worm-eaten. Unlocking it, he ushered me into a barren hallway with what was once splendid dark oak paneling. Simple, of course, but thrillingly suggestive of the times of Andros and Fits and witchcraft. And then he took me through a door on the left, lighted an oil lamp, and told me to make myself at home. Now, Elliot, I'm what the man in the street would call fairly hard-boiled, but I'll confess that what I saw on the walls of that room gave me a bad turn. They were his pictures, you know, the ones he couldn't paint or even show in Newbury Street. And he was right when he said he had let himself go. Here, I have another drink. I need one anyhow. There's no use in my trying to tell you what they were like, because the awful, blasphemous horror and the unbelievable loathsomeness and moral theater came from simple touches quite beyond the power of words to classify. There was none of the exotic technique you saw in Sidney Lumet, None of the Saturnian landscapes and lunar fungi that Clark Ashton Smith uses to freeze the blood. The backgrounds were mostly old churchyards, deep woods, cliffs by the sea, brick tunnels, ancient paneled rooms, or simple vaults of masonry. Copp's Hill burying ground, which could not be many blocks away from this very house, was a favorite scene. The madness and monstrosity lay in the figures in the foreground, for Pickman's morbid art was preeminently one of demonic portraiture. These figures were seldom completely human, but often approached humanity in varying degree. Most of the bodies, while roughly bipedal, had a forward slumping and a vaguely canine cast. The texture of the majority was a kind of unpleasant rubberiness. I can see them now. Their occupations, well, don't ask me to be too precise. They were usually feeding. I won't say on what. They were sometimes shown in groups, in cemeteries or underground passages, and often appeared to be in battle over their prey, or rather their treasure trove. And what damnable expressiveness Pickman sometimes gave the sightless faces of the charnel booty. Occasionally the things were shown leaping through open windows at night, or squatting on the chests of sleepers, worrying at their throats. One canvas showed a ring of them baying about a hanged witch on Gallows Hill, whose dead face held a close kinship to theirs. But don't get the idea that it was all this hideous business of theme and setting which struck me faint. I'm not a 3-year-old kid, and I'd seen much like this before. It was the faces, Elliot. Those accursed faces that leered and slavered out of the canvas with their very breath of life. By God, man, I verily believe they were alive. That nauseous wizard had waked the fires of hell in Pigment, and his brush had been a nightmare spawning wand. Give me that decanter, Elliot. There was one thing called The Lesson. Heaven pity me that I ever saw it. Listen, can you fancy a squatting circle of nameless, dog-like things in a churchyard, teaching a small child how to feed like themselves? The price of a changeling, I suppose you know the old myth about how the weird people leave their spawn in cradles in exchange for the human babes they steal. Pickman was showing what happens to those stolen babes, how they grow up. And then I began to see a hideous relationship in the faces of the human and non-human figures. He was in all his gradations of morbidity between the frankly non-human and the degradedly human, establishing a sardonic linkage in evolution. The dog things were developed from mortals. And no sooner had I wondered what he made of their own young as left with mankind in the form of changelings than my eye caught a picture, embodying the very thought. It was that of an ancient Puritan interior, a heavily beamed room with lattice windows, a settle, and a clumsy 17th century furniture, with the family sitting about while the father read from the scriptures. Every face but one showed nobility and reverence, but that one reflected the mockery of the pit. It was that of a young man in years, and no doubt belonged to a supposed son of that pious father, but in essence it was the kin of the unclean things. It was their changeling, and in a spirit of supreme irony, Pickman had given the features a very perceptible resemblance to his own. By this time, Pickman had lighted a lamp in the adjoining room and was politely holding open the door for me, asking me if I would care to see his modern studies. I hadn't been able to give him much of my opinions. I was too speechless with fright and loathing, but I think he fully understood and felt highly complimented. And now, I want to assure you again, Elliot, that I'm no mollycoddle to scream at anything which shows a bit of a departure from the usual. I'm middle-aged and decently sophisticated, and I guess you saw enough of me in France to know I'm not easily knocked out. Remember, too, that I'd just about recovered my wind and gotten used to those frightful pictures which turned colonial New England into a kind of annex of hell. Well, in spite of all this, that next room forced a real scream out of me, and I had to clutch at the doorway to keep from keeling over. The other chamber had shown a pack of ghouls and witches overrunning the world of our forefathers. But this one brought the horror right into our own daily life. God, how that man could paint! There was a study called Subway Accident, in which a flock of the vile things were clambering up from some unknown catacomb through a crack in the floor of the Bolliston Street subway and attacking a crowd of people on the platform. Another showed a dance on Copp's Hill, among the tombs with the background of today. Then there were any number of cellar views with monsters creeping in through holes and rifts in the masonry and grinning as they squatted behind barrels or furnaces and waited for their first victim to descend the stairs. One disgusting canvas seemed to depict a vast cross-section of Beacon Hill with ant-like armies of mephitic monsters squeezing themselves through burrows that honeycombed the ground. Dances in the modern cemeteries were freely pictured, and another conception somehow shocked me more than all the rest. A scene in an unknown vault where scores of the beast crowded about one who held a well-known Boston guidebook and was evidently reading aloud. All were pointing to a certain passage, and every face seemed so distorted with epileptic and reverberant laughter that I almost thought I heard the fiendish echoes. The title of the picture was Holmes, Lowell, and Longfellow Lie Buried in Mount Auburn. As I gradually steadied myself and got readjusted to this second room of deviltry and morbidity, I began to analyze some of the points in my sickening loathing. In the first place, I said to myself, these things were repelled because of the utter inhumanity and callous cruelty they showed in Pickman. The fellow must be a relentless enemy of all mankind to take such glee in the torture of brain and flesh and the degradation of the mortal tenement. In the second place, they terrified because of their very greatness. Their art was the art that convinced. When we saw the pictures, we saw the demons themselves and were afraid of them. And the queer part was that Pickman got none of his power from the use of selectiveness or bizarre. Nothing was blurred, distorted, or conventionalized. Outlines were sharp and lifelike, and details were almost painfully defined. In the faces, it was not any mere artist interpretation that we saw. It was pandemonium itself, crystal clear in stark objectivity. That was it, by heaven. The man was not a fantastiste or romanticist at all. He did not even try to give us the churning, prismatic ephemera of dreams, but coldly and sardonically reflected some stable, mechanistic, and well-established horror world, which he saw fully brilliantly, squarely, and unfalteringly. God knows what that world could have been, or where he ever glimpsed the blasphemous shapes that loped and trotted and crawled through it. But whatever the baffling source of his images, one thing was plain. Pickman was in every sense, in conception and in execution, a thorough, painstaking, and almost scientific realist. My host was now leading the way down cellar to his actual studio, and I braced myself for some hellish effects among the unfinished canvases. As we reached the bottom of the damn stairs, he turned his flashlight to a corner of the large open space at hand, revealing the circular brick curb of what was evidently a great well in the earthen floor. We walked nearer, and I saw that it must be 5 feet across, with walls a good foot thick, and some 6 inches above the ground level. Solid work of the 17th century, or I was much mistaken. That, Pickman said, was the kind of thing he had been talking about, an aperture of the network of tunnels that used to undermine the hill. I noticed idly that it did not seem to be bricked up, and that a heavy disc of wood formed the apparent cover. Thinking of the things this well must have been connected with if Pickman's wild hints had not been mere rhetoric, I shivered slightly, then turned to follow him up a step and through a narrow door into a room of fair size, provided with a wooden floor and furnished as a studio. An acetylene gas outfit gave the light necessary for work. The unfinished pictures on easels or propped against the walls were as ghastly as the finished ones upstairs, and showed the painstaking methods of the artist. Scenes were blocked out with extreme care, and penciled guidelines told of the minute exactitude which Pickman used in getting the right perspective and proportions. The man was great. I say it even now, knowing as much as I do. A large camera on a table excited my notice, and Pickman told me that he used it in taking scenes for backgrounds, so that he might paint them from photographs in the studio instead of carting his outfit around the town for this or that view. He thought a photograph quite as good as an actual scene or model for sustained work, and declared he employed them regularly. There was something very disturbing about the nauseous sketches and half-finished monstrosities that leered around from every side of the room, and when Pickman suddenly unveiled a huge canvas on the side away from the light, I could not for my life keep back a loud scream. The second I had emitted that night, it echoed and echoed through the dim vaultings of that ancient and nitrous cellar, and I had to choke back a flood of reaction that threatened to burst out as hysterical laughter. Merciful Creator, Elliot, but I don't know how much was real and how much was feverish fancy. It doesn't seem to me that Earth can hold a dream like that. It was a colossal and nameless blasphemy with glaring red eyes, and it held in bony claws a thing that had been a man gnawing at the head as a child nibbles at a stick of candy. Its position was a kind of crouch, and as one looked, one felt that at any moment it might drop its present prey and seek a juicier morsel. But damn it all, it wasn't even the fiendish subject that made it such an immortal fountainhead of all panic. Not that, nor the dog face with its pointed ears and bloodshot eyes, flat nose and drooling lips. It wasn't the scaly claws, nor the mold-caked body, nor the half-hoofed feet. None of these. Though any one of them might well have driven an excitable man to madness. It was the technique, Elliot. The cursed, the impious, the unnatural technique. As I am a living being, I never elsewhere saw the actual breath of life so fused into a canvas. The monster was there. It glared and gnawed and gnawed and glared, and I knew that only a suspension of nature's laws could ever let a man paint a thing like that without a model. Without some glimpse of the netherworld which no mortal unsold to the fiend has ever had. Pinned with a thumbtack to a vacant part of the canvas was a piece of paper, now badly curled up, probably, I thought, a photograph, from which Pickman meant to paint a background, as hideous as the nightmare it was to enhance. I reached out to uncurl and look at it when suddenly I saw Pickman start as if shot. He had been listening with peculiar intensity ever since my shocked scream had waked unaccustomed echoes in the dark cellar, and now he seemed struck with a fright which, though not comparable to my own, had in it more of the physical than of the spiritual. He drew a revolver and motioned me to silence, then stepped out into the main cellar and closed the door behind him. I think I was paralyzed for an instant. Imitating Pickman's listening, I fancied I heard a faint, scurrying sound somewhere, and a series of squeals or bleats in a direction I couldn't determine. I thought of huge rats and shuddered. Then there came a subdued sort of clatter, which somehow set me all in goose flesh. A furtive, groping kind of clatter, though I can't attempt to convey what I mean in words. It was like heavy wood falling on stone or brick. Wood on brick, what did that make me think of? It came again and louder, and there was a vibration as if the wood had fallen farther than it had fallen before. After that followed a sharp, grating noise, a shouted gibberish from Pickman, and the deafening discharge of all 6 chambers of a revolver, fired spectacularly as a lion tamer might fire in the air for effect. A muffled squeal or squawk, and then a thud. Then more wood and brick grating, a pause, and the opening of the door, at which I'll confess I started violently. Pickman reappeared with a smoking weapon, cursing the bloated rats that infested the ancient well. "The deuce knows what they eat, Thurber," he grinned, for those archaic tunnels touched graveyard and witch den and seacoast. "But whatever it is, they must have run short, for they were devilishly anxious to get out. Your yelling stirred them up, I fancy. Better be cautious in these old places. Our rodent friends are the one drawback, though. I sometimes think they're a positive asset by way of atmosphere and color." Well, Elliot, that was the end of the night's adventure. Pickman had promised to show me the place, and heaven knows he had done it. He led me out of that tangle of alleys in another direction, it seems, for when we sighted a lamp-post, we were in a half-familiar street with monotonous rows of mingled tenement blocks and old houses. Charter Street, it turned out to be. But I was too flustered to notice just where we hit it. We were too late for the elevated, and walked back downtown through Hanover Street. I remember that walk. We switched from Tremont up Beacon, and Pickman left me at the corner of Joy, where I turned off. I never spoke to him again. Why did I drop him? Don't be impatient. Wait till I ring for coffee. We've had enough of the other stuff, but I, for one, need something. No, it wasn't the paintings I saw in that place, though I'll swear they were enough to get him ostracized in 9/10 of the homes and clubs of Boston, and I guess you won't wonder now why I have to steer clear of the subways and cellars. It was something I found in my coat the next morning. You know the curled-up paper tacked to that frightful canvas in the cellar? The thing I thought was a photograph of some scene he meant to use as a background for that monster. That last scare had come while I was reaching to uncurl it, and it seems I had vacantly crumpled it into my pocket. But here's the coffee. Take it black, Elliot, if you're wise. Yes, that paper was the reason I dropped Pickman. Richard Upton Pickman, the greatest artist I have ever known, and the foulest being that ever leaped the bounds of life into the pits of myth and madness. Elliot, old Reed was right. He wasn't strictly human. Either he was born in strange shadow, or he'd found a way to unlock the forbidden gate. It's all the same now, for he's gone. Back into the fabulous darkness he loved to haunt. Here, let's have the chandelier going. Don't ask me to explain or even conjecture about what I burned. Don't ask me, either, what lay behind that mole-like scrambling Pickman was so keen to pass off as rats. There are secrets, you know, which might have come down from old Salem times, and Cotton Mather tells even stranger things. You know how damn lifelike Pickman's paintings were. How we all wondered where he got those faces. Well, that paper wasn't a photograph of any background after all. What it showed was simply the monstrous being he was painting on that awful canvas. It was the model he was using, and its background was merely the wall of the cellar studio, a minute detail. But by God, Elliot, it was a photograph from life. And that is the end of Pickman's model.
I don't blame him for talking mad shit.
Well, let me talk mad shit about this guy. You want to know why I don't talk to Pickman? I'll tell you why I don't talk to Pickman.
Picture it.
I'll tell you why I don't talk to Pickman. He's taking weird pictures of monsters in his cellar. I saw it. I seen it.
Also, halfway through, I felt something digging in my back. I had vertebrae digging into my back.
Dad had vertebrae digging into his back.
Like, what the hell is that stabbing me? Fuck.
That's what it was there for.
Ah! That's
it's a book. The vertebra holds the book. The vertebra holds the book, and then you open the book, and then it holds the book. Because it's heavy. I have a lot of heavy books.
I love that.
Book holder. Pickman's model is the best one because it's all a frame story, and the frame is just two dudes talking shit, and I just
really you only hear one side of the conversation.
Oh yeah, it's just him like, Elliot, let me tell you, I've seen some things.
Here's the tea.
Here, have some coffee. Have some coffee. We're gonna have some coffee. I'm gonna tell you about what I saw. You can't tell anybody else. It was 3D printed. 3D printed. You hold the vertebra, and then you... Right, though?
It's fantastic.
Just dudes spilling tea. It's the best kind of story. It's just dudes talking mad shit. They're both in academia, and they're just like, fuck that guy. He makes weird paintings. I seen it. I saw it.
His paintings are fucking weird.
He tried to tell me it was rats.
It's not fucking rats.
I knew it wasn't fucking rats.
It's never fucking rats.
It's never rats, Elliot. Oh, you missed the part where Dad's here.
Who missed it?
Swiftwood. They were like, I missed the part where Dad was here, and
nice little jump scare on All Hallows Eve.
'Tis the season. Is everyone enjoying the Halloween special? And from here, I got some creepypasta. I can read more Lovecraft if you want, but all of them are kind of more long than that. I debated on doing Eric Zahn if you wanted me to, but that one's also quite long. So, like, I didn't know if you wanted to do creepypasta or more traditional horror. Either one is okay with me. I've got some creepypasta on deck. I have my favorite creepypasta. I picked a great night to come back. It's the Halloween special, baby. We're doing creepy stories tonight. That's all that's on deck. And it's completely up to you guys. I have my old phone here. I got some that I have like 20 tabs open. It's all creepypasta. How was the treaters? Oh. Well, Dave had to... Ew, let's get here a minute. Dave had to go to Louisville. His dad just had surgery, so... and he's gonna go visit his brother. So... Okay. We can do my favorite creepypasta if you want. Now, the number one reason I picked this is because when I first read it, and I read a lot of, like, No Sleep, and there's one thing in terms of quality for really good quality content. And there's other things that just I like because they give me weird feelings. And that is, like, a good thing for me in horror, where you feel uncomfortable with yourself is, like, also, like, another thing that I deeply really like, where you're just like, I read it, and now I feel uncomfortable with myself for some reason. And, like, I really like that My Little Pony creepypasta. I don't know if I could read it. We might get banned. But that one makes me deeply uncomfortable with myself. I really thoroughly enjoyed it in a terrible way. And that is one thing that makes a really... yeah, like, it just makes me uncomfortable with myself. And my favorite one, for this reason, trigger warnings for this one, cannibalism. So, but this one I really like, because by the end of it, I was strangely hungry. And that is not something you want to, like, dig into with yourself. And you're just like, oh. It's not the best creepypasta I've ever read. But it is the best one that has made me feel uncomfortable. Personally. By the time I got into it, I was like, I could really go for some ribs. Like, I was really uncomfortable, like, deeply uncomfortable with the fact that fantastic. I left the story hungry, and then I had to evaluate that within myself, and that made me deeply uncomfortable. So this is called The Book of the Ravenous. You can look it up if you like. Okay. I think calling it an obsession would have been an exaggeration. I'd have preferred the more acceptable term, hobby, to describe my collecting of old cookbooks. Yes, it was a hobby. We all need hobbies, you know, something to pass the time between lunch and dinner, work and sleep, birth and death. My hobby never consumed the house or anything like that. With great dusty tomes snaking their way upwards until they eclipsed the sun, my wife made sure that the books stayed in my study. Nowhere else. Unless, of course, I had planned on using them, in which case they were granted access to the cupboards in the kitchen. You could imagine that when most of my books were for 19th century aristocrats or for people working around the World War II rationing system, few of my cookbooks ever saw my house beyond the dimly lit study, where the dust mites did not so much dance under the languid light as they did drift stagnantly, like clouds making their way across the sky. I found this arrangement agreeable, since it kept me on the right side of the oh-so-fine line all collectors walk, the line that separates a collector from a hoarder. So I spent my nights sequestered away in the study, with its deep green carpet and custard yellow walls. The room was certainly an eyesore, but the shelves of cookbooks covered most of the wallpaper, and the dull light of the study meant it was easy to pretend the carpet wasn't such an unpleasant color. The obligation was, however, that if I spent my nights flicking through the mottled pages of old cookbooks, I had to use some of my knowledge to put dinner on the table every night. I wasn't a master chef, but I knew which end of a knife was sharp and was happy to make meals for our little family of 3. The night before I found the book, I was ladling great heaps of risotto into our bowls while my wife impatiently tapped her cherry-red fingernails on the dining table. I always thought her having such bright, obnoxiously colored nails was unsightly, especially since my wife typically dressed in browns and beige, but perhaps that was the point. Her nails were like a release from the blandness of her attire. Hunter sat with his head resting on the table, no doubt itching to finish dinner and run back up to his room to play video games or do whatever else it is 13-year-old boys do when they're alone. I suppose in another family, Hunter would have been reprimanded for being so solitary. But everyone in this household spent most of their time alone, so he was simply following suit. We began to eat wordlessly, but as the oppressive silence grew thicker, we started trading pieces of small talk to alleviate some of the awkwardness. So, Hun, I was looking at the calendar and realized that Hunter's science camp starts the day I go to visit the Ice Queen. Yes, my wife and I both decided that the best label for her mother would be the Ice Queen, and I think that says all you need to know about her character. You sure you'll be okay with the house all to yourself? I scoffed. Somehow I think I'll manage. She knew I wasn't going with her. The rule we established was that I only tag along with my wife every other time we receive summons from the Ice Castle. Every other time, my job as a librarian keeps me too busy to come see her. With that, the spell of silence was broken, and we all began chatting about school, work, and ordinary family things. And I laugh now, thinking about how this was the last night where I was truly sane. It was the night before I discovered my crown jewel. My job as a librarian was an enjoyable one. While my library, like most, had a stunted and unloved cookbook section, occasionally I'd be asked to make the 3-hour drive up to the gargantuan storage facility where all the older books in the regional library's collection were held, to pick up books for people who had requested them and return those that had been sent out previously. It was tedious, to be sure, but I was allowed the entire day for such a task, and I regaled in the ancient books found there. It was in this place my love for cookbooks was born. Even if I necessarily couldn't take any of these books for my keeping, feeling the dusty film on their pages, the stains left from previous uses, each one like its own artifact, forever preserved within the bound leather tomes. I fell in love with these recipes and the context they came from. From 18th century housewives to the dying breed of 20th century royal families, every recipe was tailored for someone. But while there wasn't a single book in my collection that I wasn't in love with, some books were more loved than others. On this particular day, I found the book that would top all others. My one true love, my crown jewel. Every collector has a crown jewel, a typically rare and special article of whatever item it is they like to collect. It takes a while, and some collectors' crown jewels are better than others, but if one persists at their hobby long enough, they're bound to find the one addition to their collection that makes it special. I had finished all the work I was supposed to do in the facility, and spent the rest of the day wandering among the labyrinth of ancient shelves creaking under the weight of ancient books. I ran my hand along their spines, noticing how, just like the pages themselves, the exterior of these books were also coated in a fine layer of dust. Not all these books were cookbooks, but every one told an engrossing story. Maps of old prospector towns, letters sent between nobles. I was lost in the sea of times long gone. While wandering through the aisles, drifting deeper than I ever had before, I found a large pile of books that had toppled from their shelf, spilling all over the floor. It was as though the shelf had violently vomited all of these musty books from itself, leaving them in disarray. As a librarian, it was my duty to stuff these books back in their shelf. I was unfamiliar with what order they were placed in, so I just used my best judgment. The pile of books seemed to be unending, and the work quickly grew monotonous. What broke the monotony was the book that lay at the very bottom of the pile, being smothered by all the others. A leather-bound tome, with its cover faded and wrinkled, but still intricately decorated. In that extravagant Old English font, the title read, The Book of the Ravenous. Dishes to sate any appetite. The words within were a more standard Georgian font, placing it around the 19th century. The pages were a Polack painting of brown and maroon smears and smudges, moldering on the page like some sort of fungus or lichen. At first, as I skimmed the yellowed pages, the book was only of mild interest. Only when I focused on the ingredients of a particular page did I realize the uniqueness of this book. 1 clove of garlic, 1 teaspoon salt, half a teaspoon pepper, 3 potatoes, 1 cup peas, 1 tongue. I felt fear squirming in my stomach like a black worm tying itself into knots. Skimming through the pages, more body parts appeared. Legs, thighs, ribs. There was no author, no date of publication, no introduction, just pages and pages of recipes, each one detailing another way to cook a human body part. Suddenly, the strangely colored stains plastered on every page made more sense. What kind of library would have this in its database? I searched for a barcode, some sort of marker that showed the library owned it, and found none. This book was not actually in the library system. Had it been left here on purpose, buried under all these other books? Such a morbid book frightened me to no end, to be sure, but to think that it was so unique, so strange, and far too authentically bound for it to be some kind of gag book, I couldn't resist it. The woman at the front desk paid me no mind as I left the storage facility, my crown jewel nestled safely within my jacket. I stared at the slab of meat on the cutting board. It glistened under the kitchen's pendulum lights. I stared at the veins of fat that carved their way through the flesh. I wanted to touch it, to press my thumb in, and watch the wet indent slowly rise, or remain pushed in. Grabbing my knife, I began to cut the beef. My afternoon was spent reading my latest find. Most pieces of flesh had at least 1 page dedicated to them, though certain pages such as the liver or the heart frequented as the star of the dish. As I cut the beef, the images conjured up from that book hung about me, haunting me like phantoms. Filleting the inner thigh, deboning the fingers, skinning the forearm. It was as though these images were embedded into my brain with a soldering iron. It was stir-fry that night. I had mixed in with the noodles and beef lots of vibrant vegetables that seemed to glow as the steam rose off them. I generously spooned at least 5 different spices into the dish. Despite my best efforts, the meal seemed disappointing. The noodles became claggy paste in my mouth, and the vegetables felt rubbery and bland. Sorry, guys, this wasn't one of my greatest hits, I said, trying to speak over their chewing sounds. I don't know what you're talking about, honey. This is great. Don't you like it, Hunter? She gestured to him with those red fingernails. Cherry red, like blood. Blood running in rivulets across the white kitchen bench, creating new red veins to mingle with the marble's grayed ones. Blood pooling at the bench's edge, first trickling, then spilling, then nearly rushing over, landing on the tiles with a series of sickening splatters, like an overflow of rainwater rushing from a gutter, blood filling the valleys between the white kitchen tiles as though they were veins in their own right, and the house was being granted new life, new blood. Blood. Honey? I looked up to find my wife and child staring at me like I had just had a heart attack at the table. Sorry, what did you say? I asked how work was. Oh, work was fine. Gotta go up to the big storage place again today. Any good reads, hon? No. Nothing out of the ordinary. The distaste in my cooking only grew. As long as I focused on it and nothing else, my mind wouldn't wander back to those morbid thoughts. Despite my wife's constant protestations and my son's absent-minded nodding, I believed the quality of my cooking to be at a decline. There was also something else I had noticed, a desire welling up within me. I didn't entertain the thoughts of these desires. I pushed them far, far back, sequestered them away where they couldn't escape, yet every day the niggling at the back of my head continued. Like a second heartbeat, I could hear the book calling, and calling. Every night I would read more recipes. It became a compulsion. Other cookbooks, which had once been as entertaining as a fantasy novel for me, became like reading chemistry textbooks. I tried not going into my study at all, but I was drawn there. Drawn into the gloomy depths of that room as though the study and I were bound by a string. I was in my study the night before my wife went to the ice castle and Hunter to science camp. The current recipe had me engrossed. Remove bicep from upper arm, stopping where the shoulder meets the collarbone. Strip with flaying knife and then skin. Place in a well-oiled pan with butter. Continue to cook until well browned on both sides and butter has melted into the flesh. Serve with salt, pepper, and basil. I imagined rivers of grease trickling down the browned flesh, the crackling of its surface, the steam rising in great columns like thin ghostly dancers. I saw the fine layer of salt and pepper coating the flesh like the film of dust on those old cookbooks. The leaves of basil, not a lot, only 2 or 3, daintily sat atop the dish, completing its... I looked down. On the page of the recipe, 4 great wet splotches had splattered on the page. I checked the corners of my mouth. Wet. That night, even after the hamburgers I had made for my family, I went to bed with a growling stomach. Hunter was already in the car, and my wife searching for her keys. I was watching the TV, or rather, staring at it. I wanted to read more recipes, and the blur of pixels on the screen, whatever it was not enough to hold my attention. Are you sure you don't want to come with me, hun? I'm being serious this time. I sighed and looked down at my feet, trying to appear conflicted. In truth, I was angry. I needed her to leave so I could keep reading. You haven't been yourself these past few days, or weeks for that matter. Are you sure everything is okay? Everything is fine, sweetie, was my response. Okay, I'll be back in a week. But Hunter is at his camp for 2. We'll have a whole week to ourselves. When you get back, I'll cook a grand feast, I exclaimed, throwing my hands in the air with melodramatic vigor. Okay, sweetie, I'm looking forward to it already. I'll send your regards to the Ice Queen. With that, we kissed and she went to the door. Some part of me wanted to run to her, to kiss her once more and ask her to wait as I packed my bags so we could brave the Ice Queen together, but my legs were like cinder blocks. They weren't moving. The door shut and the car drove away, and as I turned off the TV, I was left in a house absent of sound. The only noise came from my head. The book was calling. I was able to make one compromise with my possessive study, an even more possessive cookbook, instead of reading by the lamp as usual and entombing myself in the room with no open curtains and no open doors, I read the book by the light of day. Time became fluid and the hours blurred together as I turned page after page, and the sky grew darker and darker. I looked out the window. The sky was black, which was good considering it was 3 a.m. I didn't remember turning on the lamp to read, but then again, I didn't remember getting onto the page about marinating ribs either. I turned the page, yawning as I... Hold on. I looked out the window once more. The sky wasn't just black, it was abyssal. No moon, no stars, no clouds. Pitch black. A void. Bang! What was that? Bang! Downstairs. I walked out of the study and stared down the flight of steps. There was a faint, wavering light. Bang! It was coming from the kitchen. I made my way down the stairs as stealthily as possible and poked my head from behind the wall near the landing. The kitchen right before me. Bang! There was a figure in the kitchen. It was hard to see who it was exactly. The kitchen had 3 pendulum lights, though only one was on, and it was swinging in great, broad arcs, much like the item for which it was named. The figure's shape kept dancing in and out of shadows as the lights swung, being the only illuminating thing in the bottom story of the house. Bang! I only needed to see it for a few seconds to understand its shape. Bang! To understand the source of the banging. Bang! To understand the figure in the kitchen was not human. It had the buckled hind legs of a goat, and its brown hair started at the hooves and didn't stop until it had covered the head. The head, speaking of which, was slim and serious, but a goat's head nonetheless, with those muddy yellow eyes and thin, sinewy horns. The only part of the figure's body that resembled a human's, beside the overall body shape, was the goat creature's strong, burly arms, the large hands it had wielding the cleaver that it was cutting into a detached arm. Bang! It turned and stared at me with its inhuman eyes. A dream, I thought. Only a dream. It may very well have been a dream, but by no means an ordinary one. In a dream such as this, with the cleaver-wielding goat man attacking an arm, the point where he makes eye contact with you is the point where he screams or laughs maniacally, jolting you from your dream, and instead the creature gestured to a stool in front of the marble island with his bloody cleaver, and cautiously I took a seat. The banging continued. Though the light seemed to have steadied, the goat man wordlessly continued to cleave through flesh and bone, leaving a clean slice and creating that resounding bang on the chopping board. Just as I had gotten used to the steady bangs on the cleaver, a new sound caught my attention. Behind the goat creature, attached to the wall, was a cupboard. It was enwreathed in chains and adorned with a rusty padlock. It was here the sound of dripping blood emanated. The blood ran down the crevice between the cupboard doors and splattered onto the bench from its bottom. Now I could hear muffled bumping and shuffling from the cupboard as its doors bulged and struggled against the chains. I looked back at the goat creature, who was staring at me once more. His eyes seemed to say, "Are you going to pay attention now?" I stared at the arm as he continued to cleave it. The arm was still twitching fingers, with cherry red nails. My mouth began to pool with a liquid. It wasn't blood or some mysterious black bile as one would expect in a dream, but saliva. Beyond all the restraint I could muster, I licked my lips. Now, as I looked around my benighted house, I saw I wasn't alone. In the shadows of the dining room and near the landing of the stairs, in just about every place that surrounded the kitchen in total blackness, there were eyes. Glowing yellow eyes. I could hear them whispering, muttering to one another. I realized the light from the single globe above was slowly shrinking, and the eyes in the blackness were growing in number. The arm was cleaved into several thick slices, and the goat creature carried them to the oven. I followed him and found myself next to him and in front of the growing red puddle below the cupboard as he shoveled the slices in. "Who are they?" I whispered. His eyes looked like they were a pool frozen mid-ripple. "They are the ravenous. They're here to test you." Now the goat man was gone, and the pendulum light had moved to shine a slim ray of light over me, the dripping cupboard, and the puddle below it. The whispering was growing more hurried now, and I found myself surrounded by a plethora of flickering yellow eyes. I stared into the puddle of blood. My skin was as black as the shadows overwhelming my house, and my eyes glowed a languid yellow light, the light of the ravenous. The light I used to read in my study. For once this dream followed tradition and ended with me releasing an ear-splitting scream, terrified at my own reflection. I awoke to find my head resting on the book, which was most likely the occult equivalent of falling asleep near a nuclear reactor. The window revealed that now was truly night, and amid the gentle twinkling stars the moon was a crescent, a closing eye, blinding itself to the events of the night. "What do you want from me?" I spoke aloud, grasping the book with both hands. "Test me? How the hell do you expect me to do this kind of stuff, huh?" My voice was trembling, and I was truly growing angry with the book's silence. I stared at its cover, at the snakes and the ferns and the gargoyles that were carved into the leather, lending the book its intricacy. I slammed the book on the table. "Huh?" My rage was interrupted by a jarring pound at the door. I glanced at the study's doorway, then back to the book. The door was pounded upon once more. I opened the door to find a scruffy man under 3 layers of clothing, with his long, straw-like hair somewhat matted to the stubble on his face. With his every breath, he released a cloud of white frost. "Hey, man, really sorry to bug you." He scratched the back of his head, which was covered by a navy blue beanie. "No trouble. I was up anyways." I nervously mirrored the man, scratching the back of my head. My phone ran out of battery and my charger's broke. Could I please just charge it up until it gets back up? I really need to call someone." I smiled. "Yeah, sure, please come in." He entered the house and took the seat I offered him in the lounge room. "Look, it's super cold out there. Why don't you wait a bit longer so your phone can charge up some more and I'll make you a cup of coffee?" His eyes lit up, and his grin revealed a set of teeth so white and straight and perfect they could have been carved from the marble in the kitchen bench. "Holy crap, man! Thanks, but I don't want to intrude on you. I'm guessing you got a wife, kids. How do you figure?" Man, it's a pretty big house." I laughed. "I have a wife and a kid, but they're both out of town. Come on, you can stay for 1 cup of joe." I could see the discomfort in the man's eyes. He wanted nothing more than to grab his still uncharged phone from my hands and bolt for the door. But alas, with the only excuse he could think of being disarmed, he was socially obliged to accept the coffee. And in his effort to be polite, he may have just sealed his fate. I stared at the knife in the kitchen as the coffee brewed. I could end it all here. If this man goes on his way, I'd still be tormented. But if I just ended myself, I'd be free. But my stomach protested this with a mournful growl. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten a good meal. one that truly satisfied me. I made my way into the backyard, through the screen door in the kitchen, and fumbled my way along the exterior wall. My foot bumped into the toolbox. My hands trembling, and not just from the cold, I opened the box and grabbed the hammer that lay amid the miscellaneous collection of screws and nuts. Tucking the handle into my pants and covering the rest with my shirt, I entered as the coffee was ready. The man was standing in the kitchen, staring directly at the hammer-shaped outline behind my shirt. Listen, man, I really appreciate you letting me charge my phone, but I need to go. I think my phone's charged up enough anyway, man. Could you just pass it here and let me get out of here? Sure, I said, trying to manage the friendliest tone I could. I took the phone out of the charger, which I had placed in the socket next to the coffee machine. I also placed the hammer on the bench, trying to make it look as though I had some other purpose for being inside besides what we both knew its intent was. I held the phone out to him. Here you go. Could you just please put it on the bench? Now I was growing impatient, though I displayed this feeling as anger. You come into my home, ask me to perform a service, rudely deny the beverage I made for you, and now you choose to act like I'm some kind of psycho? Dude, you came from your backyard with a hammer, and you smell like you haven't washed in days. Give me the goddamn phone. I tossed it on the floor. Nimbly, he bent to grab it, misjudging the distance between us and the speed I could swing this hammer at. Steel met bone with a sickening crunch. Oh my goodness, honey, this is incredible, she exclaimed, happily chewing down the ribs I had prepared, pulling long, sinewy strands of flesh off the bone. It just melts in your mouth. I will admit, it's the first dish I've been pleased with in weeks. She put her hand on mine. That's really good, hon. I was beginning to get worried. We continued to eat, neither of us mentioning the sheer amount of grease glistening on the meat, trickling off its surface as we sunk our teeth into it. What kind of meat is this, hon? How's the Ice Queen doing? She rolled her eyes. Don't get me started. We continued to eat in silence until both of us were filled to the brim. Hey, you want to see the book I got this recipe from? Her eyes lit up with excitement. Yeah, bring it down. I ran up the stairs and got the book. I could feel it pulse in my hands, radiating a dull warmth. It was pleased. I flipped to the page I had used and showed her the method. Remove entrails and miscellaneous viscera through abdominal incision. Turn corpse over and use chisel or other blunt object to dislocate rib cage from spine. Extract ribs individually or all at once through incision and douse in marinade prepared earlier. You'll find human ribs need far less time to cook than other animal variants, so only place in the oven for... She read the page in awe, beginning to laugh. Oh my God, hon, I didn't realize you got into practical jokes since I left. What's this called? The Book of the Ravenous? She laughed harder before looking up at me. I wasn't laughing, only faintly, patiently smiling. The laughter faltered as she read on. Hun, this is... really gruesome, even for a joke book. She stopped. As she looked back at me, I saw the comprehension in her eyes. It was faint, but present. I heard her gulp. Honey, please don't tell me this. She flipped to the next page, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. I saw it before she did. From the corner of her mouth, a single, long, silvery strand of saliva caught the sunlight as it sluggishly began to make its way to the yellowed page of the book. As she looked up, the only emotion in her eyes was fear, and I heard her stomach growl. The car came to a screeching halt, disrupting the quaint and quiet atmosphere of the suburb. I really liked Jack, but his mother couldn't drive for shit. "Here you go, honey. Tell your mom I said hi." I smiled, hopping out of the door. "Thanks, Miss Danson. I will. See, Jack." We waved, and then I shut the car door, watching the vehicle raucously barrel down the peaceful street once more. As I entered the house, I found it completely absent of light, natural or otherwise, and closing the door, I followed the sounds of wet, vigorous chewing. There was my mother in the kitchen, the most inelegant I had ever seen her, gorging herself over a plate of grease-doused meat. "Hey, Mom." My voice was timid and cautious. All I got as a response was a single glance as she ripped another great chunk of flesh off a rather large bone. I could hear the grease trickle from her mouth onto the plate, where it was beginning to form a puddle the color of dishwater. And as I went to the sink to get a drink, I noticed all the cleaning supplies usually kept under the sink were in disarray all over the counter. The cupboard under the sink was padlocked and contained an incredibly faint rasping sound, as though there was someone within struggling for breath. "Hunter, my boy!" I turned, trembling and slack-jawed, only just noticing the thin stream of blood trickling from the cupboard. My father was completely enshrouded in the benighted house's shadow. I could have sworn his eyes were glowing yellow. "Come and sit down, Hunter. Eat something while you tell us about science camp. After 2 weeks away from my cooking, you must be ravenous." I'm hungry, but food feels illegal.
Bro.
It's just the way they describe meat is like, do you ever have like a really good burger?
Like a really good
it just describes it too well, and you're like, oh man, now I want ribs, and that makes me really deeply uncomfortable.
Also, like 5 minutes into reading, Nancy came in and took a massive dump.
I know.
I'm so mad.
I'm so sorry about that.
He couldn't have waited until after.
Right? You're like, man.
I'm like, man, I could really go for some food right about now, and like, you're just reading. I'm like,
I know.
Oh, how dare she? No, I don't want food.
I had the guiltiest plate of pizza rolls of my life. I don't know if you started making the pizza rolls before I started. And then you just coincidentally had a good roast. Yes. Oh my god. Okay, sorry. I know, it makes me hungry. And I'm like, food is wrong right now. Makes my skin feel greasy. Like, I'm like, I'm gross. That makes me feel gross. I must eat watching Hannibal.
Sames.
I definitely made them during the story.
Hell yeah.
You see what I mean, though? I'm like, the first time I read it, I was like, I'm so hungry. I was like, and it makes me feel uncomfortable with myself. It's not okay. Jen and I are eating now. Good to know. If you were having any meat at all in that, I also went for pizza rolls. We should have made pizza rolls. That's the thing to make. You bite into it.
Yeah.
Man, all the juice. Okay, sorry. Quit thinking about the juices.
Man.
Disgusting. disgusting.
I'm so mad. I'm hungry now.
I know, I'm so hungry.
After the live, I'll run and grab that fried rice.
I made a BLT last night. I shit you not. I was like, I did eat one slice of bacon just directly out of the pan, like grease dripping.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this is delicious.
You kind of have to.
It's delicious.
At least. Whenever you cook bacon, you have to eat one, like, fresh from the pan.
Yes.
It doesn't even get a chance to rest.
You don't. You just go... yeah, you don't rest it. You don't put it on a paper towel to stoke up the grease. You just eat it really unhealthy, like, over the pan. Like a psycho. And I'm like, and that's what it makes me think of, is like cooking meat, like when you smell it. Oh, man. Makes me deeply uncomfortable with myself. That story does. And I hope it made you feel uncomfortable, too. Because I have to feel uncomfortable. So do you. Ribs are unfortunately my favorite.
Oh, ribs are amazing. And while it's burning your fingers.
While it's burning your fingers, that's the best slice of bacon. You cannot convince me otherwise. Oh my god. Alright, where do we want to go from here? We've read Lovecraft, we've read my favorite creepypasta. We can read, I have a couple other creepypasta on deck, and I have the My Little Pony one, I have the Melancholy of Herbert Solomon, I have
Lady
the Russian
Eva.
Sleep Experiment. Oh, good night, glad we could have you. Thank you for modding as always. Had to heat up a steak and cheese chimichanga. It just makes you hungry, especially if you haven't eaten that day and you're just sitting there reading it and you're like, this sounds delicious. What am I saying?
I had rice at like 4:20, okay? So, like, of course I'm hungry. I'm talking about food and I'm just like, you son of a bitch, even though it's not.
If you haven't heard of the Russian Sleep Experiment, it is kind of a classic. It's very well written. And if you have trouble sleeping, it gives me anxiety as someone who can't sleep, because I've had stretches of a time where I've went over several days not sleeping at all. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, I used to have the problem more so than I do now. I've learned to manage it better. Mm-hmm. But the Russian Sleep Experiment gives me anxiety that I'm not going to ever be able to fall asleep again. And I'm going to be like that one family from Italy that can't sleep and dies at 27. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, I know that family.
I'm secretly related to them because my family's adopted, so we don't know where we're from. And I'm actually related to them, and this is a problem, and I'm going to die young.
Well, you made it past 27.
Do you want the Sleep Experiment is one of my favorites? We can go Russian Sleep Experiment because I love the Russian Sleep Experiment. This is one of my favorite ones. I am going to blow my nose really quick.
Okay.
I'm going to be right back. Babysit the stream for me. They can't go anywhere. You can't trust them. Can't trust you.
Oh, man. No. Dad says no. Dad says no chaos. That's later. It's no. It is supervised. Dad is here. No.
Not supervised. Is that what they say?
Yeah. River goes.
I'm back now.
Unsupervised, unbridled chaos and anarchy.
I'm back now. No unbridled
No chaos.
I'm still recovering.
Everyone just stare at Dad.
I'm still recovering from being sick last week. I had a sore throat really bad. I'm still kind of recovering it. That's why I'm a little hoarse.
As long as you're not a little horse.
Don't say it. I was halfway through telling him not to say it while he was saying it. And I'm still having issues with my nose being kind of blocked up and not able to breathe. So forgive me for that. Okay. We will go the Russian Sleep Experiment if you all want that, because I fucking love this one. It's a good one. Are we ready? This might end up being the last one of the night. If anybody wants the Rex for the My Little Pony ones, they're kind of insane. So if you want it, you can have it. I'll send you all the ones on deck that I was going to do, and you can go through them yourself and have an extra long Halloween if you want. I highly recommend it. There's one really messed up My Little Pony one that was great. Okay. The Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones in one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think that they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. And at first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber repeatedly, yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subject's thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning around the eviscerated, but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word more over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple. Keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well. Although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation, the surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the started goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, a former KGB agent, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might, first left, then right, then left, again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly, having been the first to be wired for EEG. Most of the researchers were monitoring his brain waves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined, inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you," he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly croaked out, "So nearly free." And that is the end of the Russian sleep experiment.
And my throat hurts too. Huh? That one made me hungry too.
Maybe you're just hungry.
I think I'm just hungry.
Maybe you're just hungry.
I probably am. Like
maybe you're just hungry.
All I had today was like fried rice, so yeah.
Yeah, it's like that one also made me hungry, and I'm like,
sorry.
I think Dad's just hungry.
Probably. Doesn't help that I've been, you know.
That one made me hungry. That, I think, and sleepy. I got 3 hours of sleep last night. Hooray for me. I did it. I got 3. That's good for me.
I almost fell asleep.
I am glad some people are falling asleep, having a good ass Halloween, having a fun time. I took a nap today. Did I?
Oh.
What day is it?
I think it's Tuesday.
No, I called it a nap because I fell asleep for 3 hours. I posted that message in the Discord that was like, "Hey, anybody up?" And then fell asleep for 3 hours and then like woke up a little bit and then was like, "Hey, yeah, so I took a nap." That was the 3 hours. That was when that happened.
That was the sleep.
That was the sleep.
That was just a long nap.
I just called it a nap because anything under 4 is a nap.
Facts.
It's not actual sleep. It was a nap, and it happened accidentally. Oh, man. It took me 15 minutes to go get to it, and you were gone. Because I read that My Little Pony, like, creepypasta, and then I was like, oh, this is fucked up. And I was sitting there, I was laying on the couch reading it, and then I was like, I should have better comfort content, because I was feeling uncomfortable with myself. And any good horror story makes you feel uncomfortable about yourself. Mm-hmm. So I was feeling uncomfortable about myself. And I was like, well, I don't want to diagnose this before I read it for the live. If I have to read this one, I would prefer not to have an existential crisis. So I'm going to wait to unpack that, and I'm going to go find some comfort content. And I realized something. I don't have comforting content. I don't have anything that is not disturbing. All the games I play, fucked up. They're all about cults and religious trauma. None of them are, like, great.
Or people turning on you like Catherine.
Yes. Yeah. And so I can't deal with that. So I'm like, I can't play a game. And I was like, maybe I should watch something. And I was like, okay, I have, like, 3 modes of stuff right now, and I'm out. The only really, like, good, fun stuff that I could have, like, relaxed to, that would have been a good idea. I didn't think about that. It was not my recently played, and I've already finished it, so it's like at the bottom of the list now. Forgot about the cloud game. See, this is why I need to talk to somebody. I was like,
rain on your parade.
I was gonna ask somebody for what their favorite comfort content was, and like go do that thing because I could not think of anything. And I was like, what's my favorite show that I go back to every time I'm like depressed? And I'm like, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. And that is not a valid option. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't. And so I was like, I gotta find something to watch that makes me feel fine. And I'm like, I don't have anything like that. All my favorite shows are terrible. I should have rewatched Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged just for the shit of it. I didn't even think about that. I was sitting there racking my brains. I was like, what do I do? And I just sort of nodded off, slept for 3 hours, woke back up. Tried to fall asleep again, didn't work. And then I got up. And then I watched the FNAF movie. With Dave. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's 10 p.m. We have a couple options. Because my voice is kind of getting the FNAF movie. It was good. I'm really kind of a little bit... My review of the FNAF movie. I don't know who's interested. Probably nobody. I don't even know why. Never mind. Fuck. I don't need to review FNAF for you. It's FNAF. Scott Cawthon. You get it? No. Don't need to review the FNAF movie. Give us the review. I want the review. Well, one, Matthew Lillard is a national treasure. I stand by that.
Always has been. Especially with hackers.
And, okay. Good movie. And also, I really enjoyed that Matt Pat was in it. I did not know he was going to be in it, so that was fun. He didn't lead anybody on to believe that he was going to be in it, or if he did, I maybe missed that video or something. The one thing, I'm not going to give you any spoilers. I'm not giving any spoilers. That is not going to be a part of this review. I know better. I respect you all. But the one thing that I will say, and it's not a spoiler because he's made the announcement himself, is I saw like a bunch of people on Reddit that was like 0 out of 10 because Markiplier wasn't in it. And it's like, okay, one, Mark said he wasn't going to be in it. He said he wasn't going to be. Yeah, he made it sound like he was for a little while when he actually thought he was going to be able to do it. But he was working on his own project. And I don't knock him for that. I'm not going to, like, hate on Markiplier for wanting to do his own fucking shit. He's very creative, and he's made a lot of projects, and I have high hopes for his movie. I feel like that's going to be really good. The trailer looks really creepy. Iron Lung looks great, and I can't wait to see it. And I don't fault him for that. But he made the statement, when he knew he verifiably was not going to be in the movie, he told people straight out, he was like, I thought I was going to be able to do the movie. I'm not going to be able to do the movie. I am not in the movie. Do not go see this movie with the expectation of me being there, because I won't be. Okay? And then people did exactly that, and went and saw the movie and are like, 0 out of 10 because Mark wasn't in it. And I'm like, he told you he wasn't gonna. He told you. He warned you. Don't review a movie knowing that it doesn't have the actor that you like. That's petty and childish. One, it was good content. It was a good movie. If you have played through and retain a lot of the lore from the first few games, I feel like you will like the call-outs a lot and the references to some of the other games. If you're very familiar with the franchise of games, you're going to recognize names, and it's going to be a really fun time for you. I like the way they did it. If you think children are inherently creepy, you'll get a good vibe. And I do. I hate children. Creepy. I am anti-children. I said it here. I'm not.
The only children I like have 4 legs and fur. Those are children. Everything else is just walking petri dishes.
I don't hate kids. I just do think that in certain context, in this particular context, children be creepy.
Yo.
Children be creeping. And no, definitely Denny's kiddo. Denny's kiddo is the creepiest, and I'll stand by that. No, I'm joking. I only said that because I firmly believe Denny would be like, yeah, my kid's the creepiest. Fuck all those other kids. You know what I mean? But, so that was a joke. Yes! There we go. He totally is.
Yeah. In the stories I've heard, he's a little bit of a weirdie.
Denny just being a proud parent. Like, yeah, no, he is. He is super creepy. He creeps me out all the time. He's great at it. I'm pinning ribbons. But it was good for what it was. It's not Shakespeare. It's FNAF. Come on. It's written by Scott Cawthon. So there is some, like, minor cringe parts in there that I was just like, oh, that was a little cringy. That reads like one of the books, and I know that dialogue. It's not content from any one of the books, I want to reiterate. It just has, like, a very similar kind of script where I'm like, Scott Cawthon definitely wrote that part and left it in unedited. No one checked that. But it's good for what it was. And I've followed FNAF from the beginning. I've played a lot of the games. I've not played any of the new recent ones, but I'm familiar with the lore because I watch other people play them. I think Security Breach is on the Switch now, but I haven't played it. Because for a while it was going to be like the one that was like in VR.
Yeah.
And you could play, but yeah, that tracks for Scott. But it was a good movie, and it was good for what it was. It was creepy for parts of it. It was funny for parts of it. And I really enjoyed it. And they did set it up. And this is telling, so everybody who really wanted Mark to be in it, they could easily do a sequel. I'm not gonna spoil anything or the ending or whatever, but they could easily do it for a sequel. And in fact, set it up for a sequel. If you're familiar with how this franchise works, definitely set it up for a sequel, and Mark could be Jeremy Fitzgerald if in the future, if he's not doing anything super busy. So hold your hope out for that. Watching a video breaking the lore down, but that was about 4 years ago. Yeah. I have watched every single video MatPat has put out for FNAF. And MatPat says the thing. If you know, and if you watch a lot of MatPat, you know what the thing is. He says it, and it was great, and I got a lot of joy out of that. So yeah, you can, if you don't want to go and see it in theaters, it is on Peacock right now, for free. So if you have Peacock, you can watch it. I don't know, it's not like the most popular streaming platform, but yeah, but like we have it for wrestling a lot of the time. So like,
I mean, I have it for like my Law and Order shit. So
yeah,
that's fair.
Gotta watch Law and Order,
especially if it's SVU. That's the best one.
Wendigoon, yeah. But yeah, no, it was a good movie, and I really liked it a lot. Matthew Lillard was awesome. I can't imagine a universe
that was
not awesome.
Disconcerting.
Yeah, I did.
That was disconcerting.
I put pressure on the back of this thing, and it just, and I was like, that's not a button. None of this is a button. Nothing is a button. So anyway, I give it a good for just if you were seeing it and you're not familiar with FNAF lore, like a 3 out of 5 maybe if I'm being generous. If you're familiar with FNAF lore and you like FNAF, you've played FNAF, you've at least watched other people play FNAF, and you know the basics of the first 2 to 3 games, I'd give it about a 4.8 out of 5. You're going to really enjoy the references and the people, and you're going to get a lot of the stuff that goes down before it. How many cats? 3. There's 3 cats. I got 3 cats. Okay. If I could, I'd have all the cats. You should adopt a couple of cats. But was there butter? There was no exotic butter. I will say, the Living Tombstone did the credits. They got the credits. Which was fun. Yes, the Living Tombstone got the credits. So the very famous Living Tombstone song that everybody knows, that has been a part of the FNAF lore, got the credits. Which, good for them. Good for them. That means they got money from this. Good for them. They deserve to be paid. They do hard work. They do good work. Them out here making video game songs for dick years in a row. All over the place. Good for them. They get the money. And the more people watch it, the better chance we're going to get for a sequel. The more money Living Tombstone gets. I'm glad I support it. I support it. Go see it. Go watch it on Peacock. Go someplace. They go hard. They go hard. Between them and the Stupendium, I've, the collective nerd music of my dreams at all times. For any game that I could think of. They've done everything. Between... Amazing. Amazing. They're doing amazing. And I'm proud of them.
I was listening to
Get your bag, friends. Get the bag.
I was listening to one of your playlists last night at work.
You were listening to one of my playlists?
It was just so bad.
Which
last
one?
night was so bad. Abandon All Hope. It fit the night perfect.
Yeah, okay. There's a reason those exist. I drive a lot. I don't know what to listen to. It's bad. I had meant to make another one for a while, and I hadn't gotten it together yet.
I was listening to Electro Swing, and then shit started happening, and I'm just like, nope, abandon all hope.
I always listen to Tosha's playlist now. I like that people are, listening to my play. I forget that people listen to them, so then I'm like, what do you mean you listen to my playlist? Like, people don't know where my Spotify is. But... yeah, I have a playlist called Abandon All Hope, and that's exactly what it's for.
Well, I mean, it was either that, or I listened to, my Bowie Occult song playlist that I have on there, or songs about my dad.
Chaos Drive is,
whack.
It's just,
some of it.
if you just want to, aesthetically drive around and feel like you're about to go down a deserted alley with a bunch of gravel in it and never come out again, it is the playlist for you. It's no words, it's just mood music, and the mood is danger, don't go down that, there's a full moon tonight. That is the vibe.
Uh-huh.
And that is what we go with. That is how I made that playlist. And I consistently add a lot of mood music to that, but Chaos Drive has become utterly, chaotic, because I added so much Genshin to that. That it needs to be fixed. I need to fix it. I have not. I'll fix it eventually, because it's out of fucking control now. It's out of control now. Because I just wanted to listen to Genshin, and it was taking me to all sorts of nonsense every time I was just trying to type it in. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna shove it in the Chaos, because I was in the middle of driving, so I was like, fuck it, shove it in the Chaos Drive, and now it's fucked. I gotta clear all that Genshin shit out of there. Leave a couple of them, maybe, but, clear the rest of it in there. Tried to listen to Chaos Drive to shuffle to sleep. I get that. I split world building playlist into 4 different sections. See, that's how you do it. You gotta split. Don't shove stuff in your playlist on a whim. Think about it before you do it, because you might end up fucking your shit with 120 Genshin songs on accident. Because you were trying to add the Raiden Shogun song, and it's fucked the whole thing. You wanted to add one song, and it turned into 120, and now you gotta go through and filter and be like, that's not supposed to be on there while you're driving. And I've never consistently gotten it under control, and I need to go through, black out some time, and clear all the Genshin shit. I just wanted the Raiden Shogun battle. Tell me that with not fucking just fuck you up. If you're fucking driving on the road and all of a sudden the ding 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 ding, like the fuck, it's adrenaline. It's too fast. You're under pressure. This is a boss battle, and you just gotta go. See, right? It would be good. Question: what would happen if you two what? Huh? What would happen if you do and an ant? What? I'm not sure I understand the question. I feel like what?
What would happen if you were to buy a Foxy animatronic and added the anti-sleeping gas to it?
Into Foxy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Frightening.
I mean, because the thing is that it's an animatronic, right? It's just controlled by the ghost, so I don't think... But the ghosts don't sleep anyway. Ghost's not sleeping. Ghost is ghost, man. Ghost is ghost. You don't need sleep when you're a ghost. Theoretically, you don't have to sleep when you're a ghost.
Exactly.
It's not
unless
so
you're trying
much...
to be a proper British ghost.
I feel like more than half the time, ghost is like a state of being when you aren't being perceived. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, in order to, like, really put the effort into sentience, you were either almost entirely sentient all the time, or you were sentient only when someone perceives you. And I don't know which that would be, but that's my ghost theory. That's my ghost theory.
I mean, that can be attributed to IRL theory, too.
What happened to all sleep on them? The thing is that that's why it's the joke. The joke is that you're never actually going to get to the sleep. That is the joke. That's what that's leading into. I look terrible today. I didn't even put my fucking contacts in. I can't. My skin. Terrible. Okay. That's some Doctor Who shit right there.
Right? That's
well,
Cheech and Chong level inebriation conversation.
Alright, we have a couple options. We're gonna game, if you want us to. We have... I'm pretty sure all our games could theoretically just be Halloween themed games. They're all terrible.
Ooh,
I realized all our games are terrible
together.
like last night. What?
Don't Starve Together. We could play that.
We could play Don't Starve Together. I don't think that's a great thing to play while you're hungry. I feel like you should eat.
I'm gonna go run to the house.
You're gonna go and get food
after this.
Okay, you're gonna
and
go.
I'm gonna bring the fried rice over.
Okay.
So that way you can have some too if you're hungry.
Okay.
Because I'm not a jerk, and I might bring some goat cheese too.
On the topic of being ravenous, don't starve. Great.
Oh, that was fantastic. I'm here for that. Comment. I love it.
That was the opportune moment, friends.
Hell yeah.
Alright, so you're gonna go and get food, and then we're gonna do stuff. I'm gonna set up stream, but I don't know. Theoretically all our games are horror based, so I could continue playing Binding of Isaac. I have gotten quite far. I have done so much. I was this close to beating Mother, like actually beating it. Not on a victory lap.
On just a regular.
On a regular ass run where I would get the completion mark. It was so shitty. Okay, so I've beaten pretty much all of Heaven with Cain on hard mode.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm beating shit on hard mode now, bitch.
What the? Dude,
and
fuck
I'm like,
you.
I don't know why I can't do this on stream. I desperately want to achieve something on stream so people don't think I'm fucking lying about it. You can see the completion marks. You know that I've done it, but it's just not, I don't know. I get on the stream and it doesn't work, and it's bullshit, I tell you. Bullshit.
It knows.
Because it knows. It knows. It knows. It knows. But if I do get the missing poster, I'm committing suicide immediately. I should not say that out of context. In Binding of Isaac, you can get an item that, if you go into a sacrifice room and you jump on the
Spikes.
Spikes, you get a character. You get a character for it called the Lost. No, the Forgotten. No, the Forgotten is the other one. No, you get the Lost for doing that. The Forgotten. Do you know what you have to do to get the Forgotten? To unlock the Forgotten? Do you know what you have to do?
No.
Oh! Okay. Okay. It's like a terrible system. At the beginning, at the very beginning of the run, you bomb anywhere in the room. It gives you a half a shovel. First room. Mom will attack you immediately. Multiple times. All the way to the boss room. If you beat the boss room, Mom will stop attacking you. You go down another couple of levels. You beat Mom again, and then it will have another door at the outset of the Mom level, and you have to do something with that. I think bomb that, and it gives you another shovel. Another part of the shovel. You have to carry the shovel through the entirety of the game. But you have to unlock Boss Rush to do this.
Okay.
So you have to get there in under 20 minutes. So that means you can't like take your time and go through rooms and get all the assets and get all the items and boost
the good
yourself
shit.
up. You can't get any good shit. It's speed run, baby. You go fast. If you don't find the treasure room, you don't get it, son. So then you just keep going. You have to go through all of that, get all the way to the dark room, the void, the area after Satan. And then you know those rooms. Have you gone to the void?
Not on my game.
Okay. Well, if you go to the void,
I've seen it on yours though.
if you go to the dark room, in the dark room, there is a room with a patch that's like a little square patch that looks like it's a little bit separated from the. You know what I mean? You use the shovel on that, and you find the Forgotten inside. That sounds so outrageously hard. It sounds so outrageously hard.
Coriander.
Have you gone to the void? I say it casually.
I mean, I scream into the void, but it doesn't scream back. It just stares blankly ahead.
It attacks you with skeletons. They throw bones at you. So rude. But I'm so close to doing stuff and accomplishing things, and it makes me so frustrated. And I'm like, I could achieve something. I've achieved a lot of things. And then I get on stream, and it doesn't happen. I also have Super Meat Boy Forever, which is the game I got the other day. It is by the same dev team and the same creator as Binding of Isaac. There's a lot of blood in it, but you die a lot. Part of the fun is that you die. And so that one is a little bit less stress because you're supposed to die over and over and over and over and over again. And the fun bit is that when you finally beat the level, you get to watch the bajillions of you that have died just run through all at the same time. So it's really chaotic when you die a lot. And I do.
I do as well.
But it's very fun, and I would play it for you if you wanted me to. Because it's super cute and it's super fun. Same art style, adorable.
Yep.
That would be interesting. I can do that if that's what you all want.
Yeah, we could take turns.
I don't even mind. I don't even. What am I pressing to do that? Is that a button?
I don't know.
What am I doing? It's just fucking knocking loose.
Okay, so you're covering, you're forcing air through the bottom hole there.
And I'm smacking it? Oh, shit.
Yeah. Just...
Sorry.
I did it.
Yeah, okay, that would be it. Yay, you want to see it? It's adorable. It's adorable, but there's a lot of bloodshed. It just splatters everywhere. I can there is a character called Bandage Girl there, instead of Super Meat Boy. So, it makes this really gross, like, squelching noise every time you die.
Yeah.
It sounds gross.
It's funny.
And her blood is pink, so we can go Danganronpa on this.
Hey, that is fair because I'm going to be running to grab food from my house.
I'm going to make cookie dough ice cream first. That sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. I'm proud of you. Go do that. It sounds delicious. That's the best idea I've heard all night. Anyway.
I mean, we can run to Walmart real quick. They're still open.
We can run to Walmart.
and get cookie dough ice cream.
Are we doing that?
We can.
I was
because you were excited.
I am, but like I wasn't gonna.
Do you want cookie dough ice cream?
Well, the thing is that I wasn't gonna leave the house. I was gonna immediately go in there and entertain.
You can.
people.
I can run and grab it.
You go get your food. I didn't want to You don't have to.
Do you want cookie dough ice
Get
cream?
me things. Is what I'm saying.
I know I don't. But it's just me as a person.
I also don't even know if I can have full ice cream anymore.
Oh no.
I don't know.
Because you
I haven't
haven't
tried to
had
have
true
ice
dairy.
cream. Yeah, I haven't had raw ice cream in so long.
Yeah, let's not test that theory tonight.
Yeah, probably not. Not on stream.
No.
I think I just need food. I read the Book of the Ravenous and now I'm hungry. And it makes me really want ribs, and that's not healthy. That's not good for me.
I don't think we
I
should
should
get
eat
ribs
meat.
delivered
Whatever
right
I
now.
eat, I can't eat meat. What if you just cut it with enough cookie dough? We add more raw cookie dough in there. Mix the dough with dairy-free ice cream. Oh, that's actually a good idea. Ribs sound amazing. I mean, we gotta stop talking about ribs. We gotta stop. We have to stop collectively as a group. I am gonna set up the stream. We'll play some Super Meat Boy, see how you guys like it, and if you want me to move to another game, we can. We're gonna set that up, and we'll be back. So I'll see you in VC in a few. And thank you guys for joining me. I hope everybody enjoyed the Halloween special. Just me. It's just me.
Spooky.
Anyway, and happy Halloween to all of you guys. And we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week.